A routine court hearing unraveled into controlled chaos the moment a uniformed officer crossed a line, one that shouldn't have been crossed by anyone sworn to uphold the law, especially not in a room designed to uphold justice. For many in the courtroom, it was just another local trial, nothing too dramatic. But for one woman, the halls of justice had just become another battlefield, and she had no intention of backing down. Delaney Ford sat quietly in the fourth row, ankle resting over her knee, posture straight, composed, her eyes trained forward like a hawk. No uniform on her back today, no medals, no fatigues, no ribbons of recognition, just a fitted navy blazer, dark jeans, and a visitor's sticker slapped to her chest like a label she had long outgrown. She didn't need the insignia to command respect. Her presence alone bent the atmosphere. Most people in the room didn't notice her. That's exactly how she preferred it. Today, she wasn't there to be seen. She was there to watch. At the defense table sat her younger brother, Jalen Ford. Just 20 years old, lanky, nervous, and visibly out of his element, Jalen kept turning around to look at his sister like a child watching a parent from a school stage. Each time, Delaney gave a small nod, subtle but steady. "I'm here. Stay calm. Hold the line." The prosecution leaned toward a broad-shouldered man in a uniform 2 sizes too small. Officer Trent Holloway, the arresting officer. His smirk spread wide across his face, and his arms were folded across his chest like armor. He looked proud, self-satisfied, and absolutely certain of the outcome. Delaney's jaw tightened, just a touch. Holloway leaned back in his seat and let out a chuckle, loud enough to be heard by the few rows around him, but subtle enough to pass as spontaneous. He knew what he was doing. Delaney had seen the type before. Men who mistook authority for invincibility. Men who wore their power like a weapon, not a responsibility. Case #8462B, State of Belcrest versus Jalen Ford, the bailiff called out. The judge entered briskly, gavel cracking sharply against the bench. Conversation snapped shut. Movement stilled. Jalen rose slowly, shackles around his wrists clinking with every inch. His public defender, someone who'd met him just 2 weeks ago, adjusted her blazer and stood with practiced indifference. "Your Honor," she began, "the defense calls Delaney Ford to the stand." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Delaney stood and moved forward with deliberate control. The young court clerk watching her flinched, not from fear, but as if the very air shifted around Delaney's stride. She didn't need to speak to make a statement. She took her oath, then sat down at the witness box with hands clasped in front of her. "Name for the record?" asked the defender. "Delaney Ford." "Occupation?" She didn't look at her lawyer. She looked straight at the prosecutor, locking eyes as she spoke. "Master Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. Force Recon Unit." The room stilled. A few people even stopped breathing. The prosecutor blinked. The court reporter hesitated mid-keystroke. Even the judge sat up a little straighter. "Miss Ford," the defense lawyer continued, steady but with more confidence now, "why are you here today?" "To testify for my brother." "And were you with Mr. Ford the night of the alleged incident?" "Yes." "And how can you be certain of that?" "I was home on leave. He stayed at my place. I have airline receipts, front desk security logs from my apartment, and a neighbor who brought over lemon pie at around 10 p.m. that evening." Somewhere in the gallery, someone chuckled. The judge's glare shut it down instantly. Officer Holloway shifted, folding his arms tighter. "No further questions," the defender said. The judge turned to the prosecution. "Cross-examination?" The prosecutor, a man named Colin Webb, adjusted his tie like a man prepping for a brawl. "Miss Ford," he began, stepping forward, "is it true you were trained in hand-to-hand combat?" "Yes." "Trained in multiple weapon systems?" "Yes." "Your training would also include, say, psychological resilience and strategic manipulation?" She narrowed her gaze slightly. "It includes training to identify threats and confront them directly." "Why?" He paced. "Could that training include lying, if you believed it protected your brother?" "No," she answered without hesitation. "And I haven't lied. You claim your brother stayed with you all night. How do we know he didn't leave after you fell asleep?" "You don't," she replied evenly. "That's your job to prove, not mine." Webb blinked. The confidence had caught him off guard. He tried again, but before he could formulate another question, Holloway snickered loudly from his seat. A few heads turned. Delaney didn't even flinch. No further questions, Webb muttered, retreating. Delaney stepped down from the stand. She passed Holloway in the aisle, and that's when it happened. As she walked by, Officer Holloway accidentally jabbed her sharply in the side with his elbow. Not a stumble, not a brush. A calculated hit, sharp, sudden, precise. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. The young bailiff shouted, "Hey!" Delaney didn't flinch. She didn't stagger. She stopped, pivoted slightly, and stared at Holloway with the kind of calm that preceded storms. The judge slammed the gavel again. "Order. What just happened?" "I didn't see her," Holloway said with a shrug. "You were 2 feet away," the bailiff shot back. "Permission to speak openly, Your Honor?" Delaney asked. The judge nodded after a pause. She turned, voice carrying cleanly across the courtroom. "I've been shot at, lost friends to insurgents, and carried wounded out of ambushes. But I have never been physically assaulted by a law enforcement officer inside an American courthouse." Silence. The weight in the room was crushing. "I request that Officer Holloway be removed for the remainder of my testimony." The judge nodded again. "Granted." The bailiff stepped forward. Holloway protested, but the look on her face said there'd be no debate. As she walked him out, his voice dropped to a hiss as he passed Delaney. "This isn't over." Delaney didn't turn her head. "Neither is the war," she replied softly. After court recessed, the gallery thinned slowly, like mourners leaving a quiet wake. Outside the courthouse, Jalen sat on a bench, wrist-free now, but eyes still stormy with fear. Delaney stood beside him, still scanning. "You all right?" he asked. She took a long breath. "You're not going back into that courtroom." "They offered me a plea," he said. 3 years. Felony. Probation if I behave." "You take that," she said sharply, "and you lose your right to vote. You lose housing. You lose jobs. It follows you forever." Jalen's eyes welled. "I don't want to disappear." "You won't," she said. A man in a charcoal suit approached them on the courthouse steps. Smooth walk. Sharp eyes. Flash of a badge. "Delaney Ford?" he asked. She nodded. "You're late." "I know," he replied. "Name's Agent River Moss. Civil rights investigations." Delaney folded her arms. "What do you want?" "Heard about what happened inside." Holloway's already scrubbing his digital footprint. Files missing. Footage erased. He's covering his tracks fast. "Obstruction of justice," she said. "Welcome to Belcrest," River muttered. "That's called Monday." He nodded toward Jalen. "He's in deeper than you think. Holloway's part of a whole protected network. Complaints buried. Video lost. Records altered. You're not just dealing with a rogue cop." Delaney looked at him, steady. "You want names? I want proof. I can get you both." River raised an eyebrow. "You have access?" "I have instincts," she replied. "And friends who owe me favors." She scribbled a name on a receipt from her coat pocket. "Talk to Trevor Cass. Arrested 3 months ago. Same officer. He'll talk, if you ask right." River took the paper. "And what are you going to do?" Delaney's expression didn't change. "Draw fire." That night, she filed an official complaint, not quietly, not internally, but publicly. She reached out to journalists, lawyers, and veterans groups. The footage taken inside the courtroom began circulating online. Not just Holloway's shove, but the moment she stood, unwavering, and named the assault for what it was. By morning, civil rights attorneys from across the state had volunteered to review Jalen's case. Community leaders staged a rally outside the courthouse. The mayor issued a statement, carefully worded but clearly nervous, and Holloway? Suspended, pending investigation. Delaney didn't celebrate. Not even when Jalen's charges were dropped. She didn't smile when reporters praised her or when hashtags trended online. She stood under the same courthouse archway, watching, remembering, because for every Jalen, there were hundreds who didn't have a sister with combat scars and an iron voice. Hundreds who were never believed, who disappeared quietly into a system that thrived on silence. As the press circled her, shouting questions, Delaney didn't respond. She wasn't interested in attention. She was interested in change. River found her later, leaning against a light pole outside City Hall. "You made a mess," he said. "Good," she replied. "Maybe now they'll stop sweeping." Together, they walked in silence. Delaney Ford wasn't done. She'd fought on foreign soil, But now she was fighting for home. This wasn't about vengeance. This was about memory, about forcing a city to remember the names it had tried to erase. They had kicked the wrong soldier in the wrong courtroom. Now she was coming for everything they tried to bury. And she wouldn't stop until the last root was exposed.